Hello, my name is August Gold, and my intention is to spend an hour with you right now telling you a story or three. Right? Now, your intention might be different. You might not spend the hour with me, but I have every intention of spending the hour with you. And I'm going to start by telling you a story that I got to say right up front is not going to put me in the best light. Not going to put me in the best light, but I've had enough therapy that I can do that. So I'm having my coffee in the morning. And I do in the morning what I call a morning practice. In the business world now, they have adopted the idea of a morning practice, which every philosophy, every religion, every path of a way of being will always tell you that the morning is a seminal time. It's the most fertile time for you to connect with yourself, for you to connect with life itself, for you to get centered, for you to get aligned. So this is what I'm doing. I'm having my coffee and I'm aligning myself. In the meantime, I see out the two front windows that the landscaper pulls up with his truck, and of course the gigantic bin behind his truck that he puts all his refuse in. He pulls up and he parks it right in front of my driveway. Now, I have two driveways to my left and right. There are 3 townhouses and I'm the middle one. He never parks it anywhere else but in front of my driveway, even though, for at least the last 5 times that he's parked in my driveway, I have gone outside to tell him, I use this driveway. I have people coming in this driveway, right? In the morning, it happens. And so why don't you park your gigantic truck and bin at the neighbor's driveway right beside me, because there's nobody who even lives there. That place is empty. So you can park in the driveway, or you could park next to my next door neighbor on the other side, because they never go out. She's old, she's very old, and she never goes out. She has people who do everything for her. She has a car, but she rarely, if ever, uses it. You can pick those 2 driveways. 5 months in a row this happens. And on this morning, here I am having my coffee and my wonderful spiritual morning practice, and I look out the window and they park in front of my driveway again. So I go outside, and yet again I explain to them that they have got to move their truck, because on that particular day it just so happened I did have somebody who was coming right after I was finished with my practice, and we were going to practice something together. So could he move his, they're not here now. He said, they're not here now. I said, they're coming, trust me, they're coming, and you guys are here for a good 60 minutes, so it's gonna overlap. He said, well, call us when it happens. And I said, why don't you just move the truck so I don't have to go find you on whosever property you're on to make you move the truck when the person is waiting in the street to come in. Blah, blah, blah. And it is escalating because he's not hearing me. He doesn't understand why he has to move the truck, and I don't understand why this is the 6th time we're having the same conversation. In the meantime, things get so heated. He is lost in the story. I am lost in the story. And the next thing you know, out of his mouth comes an F you. Now, I'm used to FUs. I am used to FUs, especially in the last 4 years of living in Fort Lauderdale, because Fort Lauderdale driving is unlike driving probably anywhere else, certainly that I have ever lived. Meaning, I give the person in front of me a 5-second grace period when the light turns green to look up from their text, to look up from their Facebook, to remember that they indeed are driving, to get off the phone, to stop looking for something, to do whatever it is they have to do, to come back to the moment, to go. 5 seconds. I think 5 seconds is generous. After 5 seconds, I have perfected the art of honking my horn in a way that sounds more like a toot than a horn honk, because everybody gets so upset when I honk them at the end of 5 seconds. instead of saying, thank you for the reminder, I was too busy doing something, now I'm going to go as I should because this is the way traffic moves. Instead of that, I usually have somebody flip me the bird. So I have tried in every way I know how to master the toot on the horn, two taps, just like that, so that they will simply get the message, the feedback, not the criticism of their life or them as a driver, just the idea that it's time for us to move forward because the light indeed is green. Take a breath into your body. I'm going to take a breath into my body as well. So it's not like I had never heard F you before or had the finger thrown at me before. It happens in traffic here all the time. You got everybody every which way driving. But when I heard him say it, I mean, I was already lost in the story. I was already disturbed. I was already just so upset. We had brought each other to such a fevered pitch that when he said F you, not words I had never heard before, and by the way, not words I had never said before, right? That's been part of my vocabulary growing up, for heaven's sakes. It's not like it was the first time I ever heard such words, but in that moment, on that day, to hear that, after this was times 6, I had all the evidence on my side. I marched right into my house, picked up the landline, and began dialing 911 to call the police to tell these guys to back off. I told you it wasn't going to put me in a good light. It might make you reconsider whether you want to spend the hour with me or not. I'm holding the phone in my hand. I am feeling a 911 frequency in my body, which is why I am reacting in a story and cannot control myself. And I am about literally dialing the 911 until it hits me. It hits me that I am the 911. I'm in a 911 at this moment. Just me. I'm not talking about anybody else's experience with 911. I am talking only about mine. I realized I was in a 911. I realized that I was in a 911 from the moment I turned and looked out my 2 front windows and saw his truck parked where I had clearly made it clear to life and to him and to anyone who would listen not to park there, and he parked there anyway. This was not what I expected. This was not what I wanted. This was not what I preferred. This is not what I liked. And because I was already in a state of being disturbed and not even knowing it, that which happened disturbed me in my disturbance, and I took that disturbance, reacting to it, and went right into the disturbance, got lost in the story of it, and began to blame the person for disturbing me. And you know what happens when we go at life that way? Exactly what happened to me and him. We went at it, toe to toe, face to face, and nobody backed off. We were both in a place of disturbance, which is why we met that morning in the frequency of disturbance. We were both hanging out there. You don't know it until a moment like this comes. Now, this is not about living your life and never being in a frequency of disturbance. All of life impacts us all the time with things that happen. Of course you're going to be disturbed. It's about what happens when you get the impact of disturbance, how you hold that disturbance, and then how you respond to it. Even if it means you're reacting to it, you're now noticing and watching and being aware of your own wild disturbance, your own wild reaction. That is infinitely better than being lost in the reaction. So you don't have to heal it in the moment and cure it in the moment or stop it in the moment. You just have to open your eyes and see it. Because seeing it, oh my God, we are told that just bringing the light of your awareness to a situation changes the situation. I'm no longer the girl lost in this story of being affronted and how could he say those words to me and I don't deserve to be treated that way. All of that might have been true. We can take everything personally. In fact, we have leaders who take every single thing in the world that touches them personally. So of course we take things personally. It's role modeled for us. Our parents role modeled it. We have never seen in action what happens other than those who apply the teachings in their life and experiment with them only to find out, yeah, this really works. When you back off from being lost in a reaction that our literal human mortal mind says, well, anybody would react this way. Yes, maybe. However, that doesn't mean the way in which you're reacting is effective. It doesn't mean that the way that you are reacting is going to move the story forward. Your story, their story, the story of the moment. You're just bickering right here about something that doesn't mean anything because you've made it into something. When we're disturbed, we make something out of everything. We make a mountain out of every molehill and insist that everybody agree with us in the size of the mountain it is. We can't take our eyes off the mountain or the disturbance. Litigation is a way of life. Of course we can go into the courts and we can litigate everyone for everything, but we first have to take a look at, am I in a frequency so disturbing that I cannot live in this world comfortably? I cannot live in the cosmos comfortably. I cannot live in my own body comfortably. That's why we don't want to get so lost in the story, because when we do, it doesn't end well. It doesn't end well for them. It doesn't end well for us. And in that moment, I was able to open my eyes. We come to a place of awareness. We open our eyes. We open our eyes. We stop. We take a breath, and we open our eyes so that we may see a bigger picture of what's happening. Not just the story that we're lost in, the trajectory of our anger or our resentment or our fear, not that trajectory. Anybody who goes to that disturbing frequency is going to be on the same trajectory. We look at the bigger picture of me holding a phone, wanting to call 911 because this guy didn't do this and this and this and this and this happened. I caught it before it spun out of control. We can catch things before they spin out of control. In fact, we can catch things once we practice how to open our eyes in a moment of volatility. We can catch things before all hell breaks loose. And we want to catch things before all hell breaks loose, because once all hell breaks loose, we're in drama. We are in 911. We got the cops at our front door. Now we're in a story. Now everything gets heated. Now the heat gets hotter. And none of it feels good. None of it feels good. We think that being right is going to make us feel good so we won't feel disturbed. It'll never happen. Getting out of the frequency, stopping frequenting the frequency of disturbance, that's going to make us feel better. And when we open our eyes in the moment, when I stood in my vestibule and I have a Buddha, for heaven's sake, hello, August Gold. I have a Buddha, it's about 6 feet tall. It's made, not this one, not the one you see because I'm in the studio. I have a 6 foot tall Buddha that comes from, I don't know what century in China, thousands of years ago. And it is a beauty. Is it thousands of years ago? 8,000 years ago, 700 years ago, I don't know. This is the moment where I would turn off the tape and look it up, but that's not going to happen. If I turn it off, that's the end of the talk. I have to start all over again, and I'm too lazy to start all over again. I have an old Buddha, an old concrete Buddha that weighs, it takes 6 guys to move it. I've moved it already a couple of times, and it's standing 6 inches from where I'm standing. You would think that I would have woken up before that moment, but I woke up in that moment. And I didn't wake up to what he was doing. I didn't wake up to what was wrong that he was doing. I woke up to what I was doing. It's no help to wake up to what other people are doing. The only way we can help the moment, the only way we can heal the moment, the only way we can relax in the moment is to look at the way in which we are reacting in the moment. And all the evidence for your self-righteous actions, it doesn't matter. It's not going to make you feel better. It's not going to move the story of your life forward in a direction that feels good for you or anybody. I opened my eyes and I saw that in my hand I was dialing 911. How crazy was this? But it didn't feel crazy in the moment. I was dialing 911 and I thought, girl, you are the 911. So I'm going to read you something that Pema Chodron says. I talk about her often because she's a great teacher. And she's great because she speaks directly to what truth is. She uses her own life as an example, and she speaks directly to the heart of the matter, as does, you could say, Brene Brown, as does the beautiful teacher Dr. Shefali, as does the teachers who we are so lucky to have working with us at this moment of our life to teach us how to live more comfortably in these bodies, how to use our intelligent minds intelligently. Here's what Pema Chodron says. She says, there is a fundamental richness available in each moment. You might not believe it, you might not see it, but let go of that. Just hear and feel how this feels going in. Truth is something we feel. It's not going to be something we can process through our brain and say, well, I agree with that, or I don't agree with that, or yes to that, no to that. That's not the way new information that expands our ability to use a portion of our mind that Ernest Holmes will tell us is already in heaven. We can't use that greater expansive portion of our mind if we're standing at the gate saying, I agree, I don't agree. That's why you have to be quiet. You get quiet a little, Ernest Holmes said. And if you listen a little bit more deeply, you will discover, he said, there's a part of your mind that already lives in heaven. Now, I would posit that this is the fundamental richness that Pema Chodron is talking about. She's not calling it your energetic mind or your electric mind or your light mind or your divine mind. Right? Everybody's got different names depending on the cultures they were raised in and the religions. Who cares what we call it? We know what we mean. There's a place in us, and she calls this place a place of fundamental richness. It is fundamentally that which it is, the substance of what it is fundamentally rich. She said it's available to each of us in each moment. And the key, she says, the key, Ernest Holmes says for him, the key is if you get quiet enough, long enough, and listen deeply enough, you'll access the part of your mind that already lives in heaven. The part of your mind that is intuitive, the part of your mind that knows and knows that it knows. She would call that, or I hear her calling that, there's a place of fundamental richness. And the key for her, she says, her way is to relax. One of her ways is to relax. When we are able to be here, she means, in the moment. When we are able to be here very directly, her words, when we are able to be here in the moment very directly, then we find. She doesn't say maybe we'll find, or we could find, or we might find if we're lucky. She says we find fundamental richness everywhere. We find fundamental richness. We are going to find fundamental richness everywhere when we relax and let ourselves be right here in this moment, here, now. This wealth, her word, not mine, this wealth is the nature of everything. It's what everything is made out of. It's like the sun, in that it shines on everyone, she says, without discrimination. It is like a mirror, she says, that is willing to reflect anything without accepting or rejecting. She's telling us the best she can with the imagery that we can understand that this fundamental richness is available in each moment. The key is to relax. And if we are here very directly in the moment, we can access this fundamental richness that Ernest Holmes calls. He calls this part of your mind that already lives in heaven, that Marianne Williamson calls. Look at how all the teachings come together into a universal truth that moves us all in one direction. And that one direction is the direction right here and right now where we are. And when we do, something happens. They all say the same thing. Something happens when we connect very directly to the present moment. I opened my eyes. It was as if, I don't know, I was blind. I was so angry I was blind. I was so angry I couldn't hear. I was so angry I couldn't see myself. I was so angry I couldn't stop myself. We can't stop ourselves. It's a real thing. We can't stop once we get on that train, that viral fear of momentum. That momentum of fear, I should say. We can't stop until we do. And what is a spiritual path? A spiritual path is a path that people walk to wake up, to expand their consciousness so they might have the experience of their life versus being lost in the experience of their life. Experience to experience in every moment. So that you can be aware and awake that you're living your life and how you're living your life in the moment. And if there are things to tweak and change so you can live your life in the moment more intelligently, more wisely, more well, more sweetly, more elegantly, more beautifully, more generously, more openly, more kindly. This path, these sets of teachings that are universal, they have no religious or philosophical bondage to the truth of the person who brought it forth. They're keys. They're keys to us, and they're keys that are dropped everywhere from this expansive part of us right here in the moment to lead us back to this expansive part of us so we can live expansively in the moment. I had to get back to the fundamental richness because in that moment, this guy was keeping me from my happiness. He was keeping me from my spiritual morning practice. I couldn't be more spiritual because of what he did, how he parked in my driveway. Right? We blame everybody and everything for how we feel without realizing that how we feel has everything to do with where we're standing in the moment, whether we're aligned with the moment or not, whether we're angry at the moment or not, whether we're here with ourselves or not. I wasn't here with myself. I was out there with my finger pointing in his face, and he was out there with his finger flipping me off. We have to come back home to ourselves. She says, when you relax, how does she say it? When you relax and let yourself be here very directly. I had to come back into the moment so that I could see that I was a girl, a grown woman, holding a phone, trying to dial 911 because somebody had flipped me off and called me a curse word, for heaven's sake, as if I hadn't done the same things in my life. This is not about having a tougher skin. This is simply about entering a moment with your eyes open so you can see yourself in the moment and the way in which you are behaving in the moment, the way in which you are behaving in the moment. Otherwise, we get out of control. You know what out of control looks like? When I was in that cancer journey with Carol, and that cancer journey lasted 3 years. Oh my God, I will probably be still learning about life and myself from the curriculum of those 3 years. It was extraordinary. A brutally beautiful and a beautifully brutal journey every single day, and both were true. Here's what out of control looks like. In the last 6 months, you don't realize there's a point at which, with certain kinds of cancers, when you're trying to keep somebody's body alive, and who does not want to fight tooth and nail till your dying day to keep your beloved alive, you will spend all the money in your savings. Oh my God, We blew through hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep her alive. Any lead we followed. Well, in the last 6 months, there were signs that things were horribly going in a wrong direction, and she probably would not be able, her body would not be able to recover enough from that. So in the meantime, everybody starts getting involved, and then you have people sending you equipment that you're going to need because different functions start going, and you have to live differently in your body. So we're bringing in things in the house and medical equipment, and we brought in a wheelchair, and we brought in a walker, and all these things you might need. In the meantime, everything went into the garage. We have had a one-car garage. I still have it. And so we put everything into the one-car garage, just piling everything in. And then one day, I got a box of, 48 paper towels, because we were blowing through paper towels. And when it came, it was this giant box. I couldn't lift it. And Carol couldn't help me at that moment. She, a woman who was just so amazingly independent and strong, she's the one who was the strong one. So I'm taking it, and all of a sudden I open the garage door from my house, the connected door, and I take the paper towels. And I just start throwing them inside of the entire garage, anywhere, not even in a pile, not in any direction that would bring order to anything. It was like, I give up. I gave up control of my garage. I had lost control. We lose control of ourselves all the time. And we don't understand yet, because nobody taught us, that we're responsible for that, not to be controlling people so that we behave like good girls and boys. That's not it at all. The path of the spiritual path, for lack of a better word, the path of self-realization, the path of self-awakening, the path of self-love. You can call it anything you want. I call it a path because it has a certain way about it. It invites us to learn how to live differently in our bodies, how to live differently in relationship with the world. And it teaches us how to do it, and we practice loosely, easily. And everywhere we turn, life gives us another way of learning it. Is it a path? The Native Americans call it a beautiful path. May I walk with beauty is one of their beautiful prayers. May I walk with beauty before me. May I walk with beauty behind me. May I walk with beauty to the sides of me. May I walk with beauty above me and with beauty beneath me. May I walk this beautiful path. They call it, they name it, they set a frequency, they set a note that's so high, and we can walk that beautiful path. We think we can't, especially not in the world we live in now, especially not in a pandemic. There's nothing beautiful about that. There's nothing beautiful, I would have said, about cancer. And we only say that because we're not in the moment. We're arguing with the moment. If we can be here in the moment directly, Pema Chodron says, if we can be directly in the moment and relax, we will encounter a fundamental richness. I held the phone up. A fundamental richness, she said, that is the fundamental nature not only of everything, but of us. There's another part of our nature that we can access, that we're invited to access, that we're invited to collaborate with. And it's the part of our nature that doesn't get lost in the stories. It doesn't get lost in the stories. It sees us get lost in the story, but it doesn't get lost in the story. It's the part of our nature that Ernest Holmes, and I spoke about this in one of my other talks, that Ernest Holmes would say, it's the part of us that already lives in heaven. It's the part of us that already is in a place of acceptance. We don't have to become more accepting people. We have to choose the note of acceptance so that when we go to the note of acceptance, we are lifted up to see this moment, this very moment, with the truck parked wrongly, with the guy saying wrong things to me, with me hot under the collar, seeing this moment when I'm in a higher altitude, playing a higher note in this instrument that we could call our body, This instrument that can play the vibrations, the frequencies of anything it wants to. When I am choosing to come from a higher place, and what is a higher place when I'm in the present moment? The higher place is what happens to me when I become naturally more buoyant in the moment. Why? Because now I have my eyes and I can see what's happening. I can see myself. I can hear how deaf I was. I can hear how angry I am. I can feel my chest tightening. I can feel myself holding my breath. I can feel how unfundamentally unrich I am feeling. I can feel how trapped I am in my own anger, and I can feel how easy it is to blame circumstances for our unhappiness. We got to stop doing that because it doesn't work and it isn't true. And it won't take us anywhere. And we can't sustain as a species. We can't sustain our happiness as an individual. We can't sustain our happiness as a species. There's so many people who believe in all their heart that when they arrive in this painful, trapped moment, the only way out is to kill the body, I mean, it's an option, but we're not addressing what's going on. We can change the frequency that we're asking our body, this instrument, to play. Now, I'm not saying going from anger to bliss. I didn't go from anger to bliss. But when I opened my eyes, suddenly I was able to see myself, my human self, in all her anger. And I was able to see that she was standing inside of a moment, choosing. She was choosing. I was choosing to play the moment through that note. And once we put a bit of spaciousness about being able to see ourselves, now I could see how blind I was, how angry I was. Now I could see how tight I was. Now I could see how everything around me felt smaller and more brittle and more hard. Oh my God, where'd I go? I wasn't home. When we're in reaction, we're unconscious. We are not conscious. And by excusing it, anybody would be angry. That's not an answer. Anybody would hold their breath. That's not an answer. Just because everybody would react the same way, it's not an answer to this moment. Because in this moment, I am suffering. That's why I want to bring suffering to the person around me, because I am suffering. It's not exactly true that misery loves company. What it is when we're down in the basement playing these hard frequencies, we can't help but express how disturbing we feel, how the world feels so disturbing. And our disturbance is what we share with others. It's what comes out of our mouth. It's the stories we tell through the disturbing vibration that we're in, that we're frequenting. We have the option to choose a different frequency. That's why taking a breath, that's why getting back into the moment plants you right where you are. And what do you discover? You discover something crazy. And Pema Chodron said, you discover not that things are a little better, or that, you can be a little gentler or a little kinder. Why don't you be nice, or why don't you be more spiritual? Not that at all. You're not putting a Band-Aid on the moment. You're looking at yourself directly in the moment, and you are making the choice if this is who you actually are. And what we find out is that's not who I am. Not only is it not who I am, it's not who I want to be. Now, I don't have to go sign up tomorrow to take, years of therapy to become the woman I want to be. I have to just make a different choice about the woman I want to be in the moment. In the moment, I can make a different choice of what note I want to play. And if I play a higher note, out of my mouth comes higher words. Out of my mind comes higher thoughts. Out of my hands comes higher activities and things that I do. Why? Because I'm vibrating at a higher frequency. When I saw what I was doing, I accepted the situation. I looked at it, I couldn't help but laughing. You can't help but laugh. You will discover this fundamental richness has a buoyancy to it. And pretty much most of the time, you're going to start laughing, and you're going to start laughing at yourself. I was laughing at myself, and here's what really got me. Before I went in to call 911, He said, okay, I'm going to move it. I'm going to move the damn truck. So I thought I won. And I went back inside to my spiritual practice, right? And a practice can't do anything for you unless you're practicing it. And even though I was practicing losing consciousness, that was part of my practice too. Spiritual practice does not mean you are going to behave perfectly or sweetly all the time or gently all the time or be anything all the time. It just means not that you're going to be a good girl or a good boy as we were taught to be growing up. What you're going to be is real. It's not about being good. It's about being who you really authentically are in the moment. And we don't know who we are because we're so lost in the moment. We are not having an experience of the moment. We're lost in the story. Do you know how our intelligent mind, the part that lives in heaven, the part that is expanded consciousness, that's what we could call heaven. We could call it a state of expanded consciousness, expanded knowing. It's the place that knows in us and knows that it knows. You know, we could, let me take a breath for this moment because I just lost that thought. And it's entirely possible I might not be able to get that thought back. So let me let it go for a moment. In that moment, when heaven, when expanded consciousness is right here for us to have, there is a giggling, laughing, buoyant nature when we can turn to ourselves in our struggle, because that's the curriculum. The curriculum doesn't mean we do it perfectly. It means however it is we do it, our eyes are open to how we stand in the moment. Our eyes are open to how we stand in the moment. I went back into the house. I was still fuming. This was before the 911. I sat down, I picked up my coffee, and I looked, and he got into the truck to move the truck, just as he said. He moved the truck 6 inches. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. He was playing with me. We say that, oh, you're playing with me now. He moved the truck 6 inches. Oh my God, it just pushed me over the edge. Here's the deal. We are meant to be exactly where we are, and life is meant to give us everything that life is giving to us, individually and collectively. Life has an agenda. Life has an agenda. It created us. Everything that life created has a purposefulness to it because everything in life is useful. And one of my favorite ways of knowing the usefulness of every single thing, let alone every single one, every single thing, is that when a chicken walks across the barnyard and then takes a poop, and the poop lands on the ground, it walks off, and the poop itself, as it decomposes, provides the nutrients for the earth. To me, that is proof positive that if the poop of a chicken has a purpose here on earth, then man, I must too. We must stop asking if we have a purpose. If the poop of a chicken has a purpose beyond what it actually is as waste matter. Of course we have a purpose. Everything has a purpose, and the purpose is what's happening now. So that when this intelligent part of our intelligent mind, when this being part of our human energy, it's in our name, human being, when we begin to turn our attention to the moment and allow this beingness portion of our nature that begins by default to emerge when we relax, we're going to discover that it's in the same moment, but it's seeing the moment totally differently. It's not seeing what's wrong in the moment, because there's never anything wrong in a moment that life brings you to deal with. There is just the moment life brings you to deal with, so it may grow you in some unique and precise way that you yourself need to be grown. It sees this moment not as you lost in the moment. It sees this moment as a point of interest in our journey. It's a point of interest in our journey. How do we know it's a point of interest? It's almost like that part of our nature puts a pin in this moment and says, oh, look at you. You've lost control. There's steam coming out of your ears. And the problem is that we think it's because of what happened. Once we begin to come home to the moment, to the fundamental richness of the moment that welcomes us, we are welcomed back. Fundamental richness is not just, dollar bills on the ground or walking on an island of diamonds. The wealth that she's talking about also includes the fundamentally rich, loving energy, the embracing energy, the sweetheart energy that life comes to us with. It is always bringing us to completion, the Tao Te Ching says, without our even knowing it. We come back into the moment and we feel this, I don't know, it's a bit of, I don't even have all the words for it. My vocabulary in these higher notes, sometimes I have more feeling and energy that comes out, but I can't actually find the word containers to put them in. It feels like the moment that I went to see Oprah's 2020 Vision Conference in Fort Lauderdale. Me and, of course, 15,000 other people. And before she got on stage, on the big, I think it's called a Jumbotron, the big Jumbotron, came the sentence, light the lights on your phone. Light your iPhone lights, whatever it said. Something that let us know that we could light our lights. They were inviting us to light the lights on our phone. Everybody took out their phones. And in an instant, this cavernous, huge, vast, dark hall was filled with nearly 15,000 people who were lighting their lights. And it was the most extravagant wave of energy, of love, of light, of glory, of possibility, of hopefulness. So many thoughts began to run through your mind, as it did probably everybody's. Oh my God, this is what we really look like. This is who we really are. This is possible. We can choose to turn on our lights as simply as somebody asking us to, if we can put down being lost in all the stories that we're all lost in. I can't light my light until my husband. I can't light my light until my wife. I can't light my light until the administration. I can't light the light until the virus. Right? We have so many stories of why we can't light our light or shouldn't light our light, or you can't make me light my light, that just to see people lighting their light because they were asked, and to feel what it feels like to be in a hall of light, individual lights, it was overpowering, it was overwhelming, it was what the conference was. It was the purpose of the conference, the meaning of the conference. It was the highest note that the conference could hit, and not that it didn't hit other notes in other ways. Oh my God, there was a note that Lady Gaga and Oprah hit where they were on the stage. Everything's gone. There were musicians, there were dancers, there were singers. Talk about a high experience. But then Lady Gaga gets on the stage with Oprah, 2 chairs, one little coffee table where they put their mugs. They didn't have an essential tremor like I did, so they didn't have to worry about shaky mugs. They put their mugs down in the center between them. That was it on this giant stage, 2 easy chairs and a table between them. And you would have felt the lighting made you feel. It was so intimate, so intimate. You felt like you were in their living room or they were in yours. And then the conversation turned, not to music as you would have imagined, or gossip as you might have imagined. The conversation turned to Lady Gaga's experience, her daily life's experience as a woman who is struggling with mental illness. As intimate a conversation, as honest, as authentic, as pure, as beautiful, as painful, as sweet, as real a conversation as I have ever heard in my life. This is fundamental richness. Fundamental richness is when we are allowing ourselves in the moment to come back directly into the moment so that we can relax and begin to open to what is here, not to the dynamic story in our head which pulls us out of here into the last moment, but the moment that we're in, the fundamental richness that is alive right here, that is alive right here in the moment, moving us forward. In that fundamental richness, we feel ourselves. We feel, oh my goodness, I'm here in the moment. Oh my goodness, I'm out of control. Oh my goodness, I can't see this man. I can't see him. I can't hear him. I just have him written into my script as the enemy of what's standing in the way of my happiness. I can't see him. I can't see if he's a father. I can't see what kind of morning he had. I can't see what he needs from anybody or me in the moment. I'm lost. Fundamental richness is what waits for us in the moment, and then it's what happens to us in the moment because it is what we are, substantively, fundamentally made out of. That's the part of us that is living in heaven, this fundamental richness that when we come back to the moment with our eyes open, we don't come back to the moment to blame ourselves or shame ourselves or criticize ourselves. We come back into this fundamental richness waiting for us in the moment, and it is as if we are receiving an embrace. Do you know how good an embrace feels when it is coming from the two hands that you have waited all your life to embrace you? We think we're waiting for everybody else to embrace us. And having had a true love of my own, having had a woman who adored me as much as I could ever hope to be adored by another human being, it's still not the same arms and not the same feeling that I feel when I am embracing myself or being embraced by the fundamental richness that I carry within me, that animates me, that is me. Now, don't let your head try and write this down and figure it out and chart it out and make you an illustration of what part is this and what part is that. We are made out of the energy of life itself. That's what moves and locomotes this body that we see ourselves to be. This personality that has occurred by the partnering, the collaborating, the blending of our soulful nature, our beingness, and our humanness. When they come together, they create a personality. So I'll tell you a crazy story. Well, before I do, keep in mind, I see the 911. I see myself dialing the 911. And as I am dialing the 911, of course I am laughing now. Suddenly I'm not in the 911. The idea is not to go through life as a 911. We can go through life even though it appears to be a life situation that is a 911. We can go through it as a 411, as a call for information, as a curriculum we are learning how to practice. We can look at life as something that's growing us and teaching us and guiding us and leading us. And every day we can show up in the moment and watch ourselves have these experiences. And we can come to find out who we are. Suddenly I'm laughing. I'm not feeling the 911 because I pulled back out of being lost in the story and began more to turn my attention to the part of myself that's never lost in the story. The intelligent part of my intelligent mind, the fundamentally rich part of who I am. When we back up into that space, whether we understand the meaning of it or not, when we just back up into the feeling of it, we'll feel it. And it's there, and I'll tell you how I know it's there. I'll tell you exactly how I know this place exists. Carol's just gone through major, major surprise, unexpected operation. She survived it. Man, warrior, princess. If you didn't know her, Broadway, she was a singer on Broadway. She had a voice like an angel, but a warrior. Oh my God, what a warrior princess she was. She survived the operation. They have her, oh my God, they poured so much Demerol into her, she was consciously unconscious. She couldn't really speak. But I did turn to the nurse and say, look, she's a little thing. She had lost so much weight. I said, she's a little thing. She doesn't need this much Demerol. You can pull back on some of that Demerol. But while she was in that state, totally high on Demerol, unable to communicate clearly, the woman that I was with that I loved was so out on the Demerol, her personality, that she was unable to communicate as the person who she was. And at that moment, that's when I decided I wanted to do a soul session with her, which is a session that I have been doing since 1990, where I simply have people take a couple of deeper breaths than they're used to taking, and I take them down to the place in them where that fundamental richness, they can encounter that place. They can hear that place for themselves. They can listen to it, and they can ask questions to it, and they can ask questions having to do with why is the universe the way it is, to why did my grandmother or grandfather say that to my parents on that day. You can ask the biggest questions and little questions. This is the place in us that is eternally in a state of being. Eternally. An energetic presence that, oh my God, how much do you love to know that it is called a fundamental richness. It is the richness and the wisdom of our nature. We are connected to all of life from this place. And so I tell her to breathe down a couple of breaths deeper than she usually goes. Can she hear me or not? I don't know. But I'm not talking to the personality part of her. I'm talking to the part of her that is fundamentally rich. That is fundamentally rich. And I say to her, I say to this part of her nature, this part of her nature that is invisible, that we cannot see, this part of our nature that we might say is fundamentally rich, but I want to see it. I want to see it. We can't see it. That's what confuses us. We can't see it. But if you know it's there, you can engage with it. You can choose to engage with it because it's you. It's right inside of you. And even I could choose to engage with it, even though it seemed as if she wasn't in a place that she was conscious enough to speak to me. And I said, what is it that we need to know right in this moment, that we need to know right in this moment? What is this moment telling us? What is this moment teaching us? What is the purposefulness of this moment, which to the naked eye looks like, oh my God, who would want such a moment? And this is what came out of her. This is what she responded, as clear as day, as articulate as she has ever been. The part of her that is her fundamental richness responded this way. It said this: stop freaking out and start freaking in to what is. Start freaking in to what is. Because life needs your personality filled with love. That's a state of consciousness called heaven. That's the part of our nature that stands in the moment, looking at the point of interest of each moment in this journey that our soul is having through life. You don't believe in a soul? Too bad for you. Let go of the part of you that doesn't believe it. The fact is, we are an energetic being. It's the last part of our name, human being. We are an energetic being having an experience on earth, and this is the experience. This is what it looks like. And I engaged with the part of her that also, the operation happened. The The Demerol happened. The inability to speak happened. All this was happening. It doesn't deny what's happening at the human level. It is just the context in which the content of her human life is happening. The context of our beingness within which our human experience is happening. And it said, stop freaking out and start freaking in to what is, because life needs our personality filled with love. I am standing holding the phone laughing. Of course I had to put the phone down. Of course I didn't engage with the call. Of course I turned to the guy, the poor guy out my windows, and realized he was the repository of my disturbed consciousness. And in a moment, the fundamental richness of the moment welcomes you back home. It welcomes you back home. And it reminds you, oh, this moment is beautiful. You're in it. How do you want to play it? How do you want to play the hand you were dealt? Do you want to play it from the frequency that feels horrible and disturbing and distressing so that you bring disturbance wherever you go? Or do you want to choose a fundamentally rich frequency which feels better? Name one, anyone. Come back to the moment. That feels good. Relax. That feels good. Be quiet long enough. That feels good. Get still long enough. That feels good. Have a morning practice. That feels good. It doesn't ensure that you will always, always, always in every moment feel perfect. It ensures that in every moment you're going to be awake and aware to the aliveness that's available to you in the moment, and you can choose it. Joseph Campbell. Oh my God. I would need a whole nother period of time to talk about him. Joseph Campbell, at the end of his life, said something so marvelous. He was a teacher all his life. And at the end of his life, he just rocked it out with a teaching that just swept the land. Follow your bliss. Swept the land. Follow happiness. Follow that road. Follow that frequency. He was showing us the upward path. Follow the frequency of your happiness, and it will lift you up into a lighter experience of each moment. What did he say? He said, my whole life as an academician, my whole life as a student of life, because there isn't a good teacher on the path who is not also foremost a good teacher, first and foremost. I mean, a good student, right? First we learn, first we practice, first we try it for ourselves, and we only share that which actually works with us. And we're always practicing, we're always tweaking. He was that guy. Oh my God, he was magic. He was magic. Magical man. And he said this, my whole life, I thought people were searching for meaning in their life. It's only at the end of my life that I realized what they really were searching for was a feeling of aliveness. This feeling of aliveness is a fundamentally rich feeling of being connected to life in the moment where life is happening, which is the moment. Come back to the moment where the fundamental richness of life waits for you. Let yourself be absorbed in it, and let yourself see what happens in the moment when you do. It's probably going to surprise you who you come to know yourself to be differently than who you thought you were when you come into the moment and you can be with yourself, both natures of you, and discover that in choosing a frequency a bit higher, the experience you're about to have is going to end up being completely different. Enough said.